In 1994, General Colin Powell witnessed a historic moment when Nelson Mandela was sworn in as the first president of a free South Africa. Mandela's leadership that day set his country on a path to unity and inspired the world. The former Secretary of State is in Washington. General Powell, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. How are you?
Remember the inauguration for us and why it's so touched you?
I'll never forget it. It was a remarkable day. We all were assembled in front of the Union Halls, and we waited and waited and waited until finally the announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new president of the new Republic of South Africa, Nelson Mandela." And he came up on the stage, and I watched through the eyes of a soldier. And what moved me immediately was that the four commanders of the South African Defense Forces, all white gentlemen, led him up as a guard of honor. And that truly showed the transfer of power, that they were accepting him as their commander-in-chief, black, white, or otherwise. I also was deeply moved when Mr. Mandela recognized the gentlemen in the front row who were his jailers and was sending a message throughout the country, throughout the world, that we will reconcile between our two sides and will become a greater South Africa. There were a lot of leaders there, and there were leaders from countries that didn't even know the meaning of democracy, were not inspired by Nelson Mandela, yet they were there because they had supported him during the difficult times of the struggle, and he was not abandoning them now, even though he probably did not, I'm sure he did not agree with their policies or their approach to leading their countries.
You know, it's interesting, General Powell, that you would point out that his jailers were sitting there because he forgave his jailers and they actually came to revere him. How do you think his time in prison shaped him as a leader?
I think, just imagine being there for 27 years and thinking and collecting your thoughts. It sort of reminds me of Martin Luther King with what he did when he was in jail from time to time, you know, letter from a Birmingham jail. And so I think Mandela realized who he was and what his mission was in life. And what he said when he came out was that, I do not want to get even. People said, well, are you going to go after them now? Aren't you going to take revenge? And he said, if I did that, I would still be in jail. And you may recall that there were a lot of disturbances after he came out and even after he became president, where some members of the black community did want to get even. And it was Mandela who once again stood up and said, no, this is not the way to go. And so I always see him as the George Washington, the Abraham Lincoln, and the Martin Luther King of the people of South Africa.
What did he teach you?
Humility, have a purpose, have a vision, be prepared to sacrifice, be prepared to listen to the other side, to try to find common areas of interest so you can move a country or a people or a cause forward. Always be ready to change your mind, but never abandon your principles.
When you think back of that time and today, the legacy for South Africa?
The legacy for South Africa is that they gave birth to a remarkable individual who in his long life brought South Africa out of this terrible scene that was living under as apartheid. And he not only freed black South Africans, he freed white South Africans from the burden of carrying apartheid around and put South Africa on the international stage as a democratic nation that has its difficulties, as every emerging nation will have, but a nation that is moving forward and will never forget the spirit that he infused into this new nation of his. And they will never forget him. He may be gone physically, but his spirit will live on forever in South Africa and throughout the world.
You are absolutely right about that. And what do you think is the best way that South Africa and the world really can honor him?
By continuing to study his principles. He would not want personal honor. He would just want people to see what he did, follow his principles, believe in democracy, believe in freedom, believe in reconciling different points of view. That would be the greatest legacy for him. That's what he would appreciate the most.
The interesting thing about him, we see a lot of pictures of him smiling, was the sense of humor that he had, and the quick laugh and the quick notion of the moment.
He had a quick laugh. Every time I was with him, I had the privilege of being with him. It was always a warm handshake, twinkling eyes. Colin, how are you? And there was an element of grace, an element of humility about the man that touched everybody he came in contact with. We also have to say, though, that times were changing in South Africa, And you needed somebody like an F.W. de Klerk. Even though they might have been political enemies, they knew they had to work together to keep this country together and to bring this country into a new era of peace and democracy and freedom.
You know, General, I was thinking about that because Mandela negotiated with the apartheid government while in prison, and he didn't even tell his ANC colleagues that he was doing that. They negotiated for years in private in order to get this done. The persistence, the courage to do that was incredible.
Incredible courage, and on many occasions he went against the leadership of the ANC, the political movement, and didn't tell them, or when he did tell them, he would essentially say, I know this is not what you want me to do, but I feel this is the thing we must do. And in almost all instances, he was proven correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was somebody, yeah.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say he had the respect of them so that they trusted him, even though they had great reservations
Right.
about the other
Even
side.
They had great reservations. They argued with him, but nevertheless, you know, he was so deserving of trust that even when they disagreed with him, they knew who was the leader. And not the leader in a sense of I'm in charge, but a leader in the sense that I am the purpose, I am the vision, I am the one who's going to get us there. So trust me, come along with me, walk with me. And that was his great strength.
General Powell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie.